So is everyone ready? Thank you so much. First of all, I want to thank you for coming up here today because there has been a lot of focus on gun violence. Lots of people like to say that gun violence is a national, a federal issue, but it is also a state and local issue. Not only do I serve as a senator, but I also am a school board member in University City. And I want to let you know that it's time that we finally address what is going on in our urban core. That is what is lacking in the conversation overall. In my district alone, in the last 8 months, we've had 12 incidences of young children in the urban core who have had dealings with guns. We had a 12-year-old who killed another 12-year-old because he took the gun that was not stored from his grandfather. That was 3 days before Connecticut. 2 days after Connecticut, we had a 17-year-old gang member who decided to kill another 17-year-old who was in our alternative school and trying to do the best job that he could to have a life and get back on track. This is an issue for all of us to be concerned about. What my bill deals with, three things basically. Parents need to be involved. They must be involved. As we deal with the issues of the urban core, one of the things you need to know is that many of these situations derive because parents are not storing their guns, period. And so my bill addresses that. We must ensure that parents are responsible for proper storage of their guns. The other thing that this bill does is that it also creates the offense of negligent storage. And it requires the parent or the guardian to tell the school if they have a gun. So what is happening in our communities? One of which is we have several students, several young people who have decided to get involved in gangs and are also involved in burglaries. So what happens in those burglaries? You have an illegal possession of a gun. A young person takes that gun and goes to school or to another place in the community and shoots another person. This weekend I did a ride-along with the St. Louis County Police and found that not only are there many of our students who are engaged in violent activities through gangs or otherwise, but also they told me that we need to address parental involvement. Let me say that again. There are parents who are out there in our urban areas who know their children possess guns, either because they're involved in gang activity or because they're just getting involved in the wrong activities in general. And it's time to say to those parents who know their children have illegal guns in their possession, we're not accepting it anymore. Every single child's life is valuable. There is not one child who has a greater value than any other child. Every child's life is valuable. And so I understand that the governor or the president did his executive order yesterday, and I'm very happy about that. I know that we have legislation that's in the House, but neither one of those measures deal with what is happening in our urban cities. There is a 17-year-old who lives only about a mile from my house who decided to burglarize some other person on the same street and took 3 to 4 firearms. Luckily, we knew, or that child was caught. Luckily, that child was caught. But what would happen if that 17-year-old decided to backlash or decided to do something to someone else that would put someone in a really vulnerable position and die? That's not acceptable. So this bill is not addressing high-capacity magazines or clips. It is not addressing Bushmasters. It's not addressing AK-47s or clips. It's not doing that at all. What it's saying is we want the community to be safe, our schools to be safe. We want every single child to have the ability and the capacity to learn in their classrooms. Just last year in University City, we had a young man who brought in a gun into the school. Luckily, we found out. We've had 2 deaths, as I mentioned before, in December around Connecticut. So while I appreciate the national conversation, I want to bring attention to what is happening in our urban cities. That is the void in the national conversation. Now, this is not a perfect piece of legislation. It is a start. And I'm glad that each and every single one of you is here today because you are helping us address the issues in the urban cities. We all know about what happened last week at Stevens College. We all know about that. We all know that it's been in the press. We know what happened yesterday in Houston. How many times is this going to happen? How many times? All I'm asking for is the ability for communities, local communities, to have the ability to promote safety. We are not trying to take away anyone's gun, period. We're not even asking what kind of gun you have. What we're saying is, if you are parent X, we would like to know as a school district that you have a gun. Now, what this does is it allows, one, the school district to know this information. If the child of parent X is in a situation where he or she is being bullied, and the school district has to respond to that bullying, we don't want that child that's being bullied to go home and think, let's go get a gun and resolve the issue. We want the school district to be able to say, you know what, there are some really terrible things that are going on right now, and we need to talk to the parent who we know they have a gun and make sure there is security, that this gun is stored securely. But it also does this. If parent X has a gun and they go on vacation and there's a burglary in that house, not only are they going to be inclined to tell local law enforcement, but I pretty much think that they're going to be inclined to also tell the school district that, hey, look, my gun was stolen. That's a really important point. You know, there are a lot of calls that I've been getting from, you know, the right, the people who believe in the Second Amendment. I want to be clear, I believe in the Second Amendment wholly. I wholly believe in the Second Amendment, that everyone should have the right to bear arms. But the Second Amendment does not say that a 12-year-old can shoot a 12-year-old. There's no protection for that. And so what we are trying to do here is address what is happening in our urban cities. And that is what is paramount. I'm, again, glad that you're here so you can talk about our issues. The first thing that has to be understood is, to understand urban violence, is poverty. If you don't understand poverty, you're not going to understand violence. The second thing that is very important to us is that we have to, as a state, do a better job with child support services. In the Department of Mental Health, in Department of Social Services, we are not working efficiently enough. We're not working together. So we need to make sure that as a state, we give resources to our children so that they have a skill set which would be conducive for their overall survival in society, where they do not want to harm another person. And that's what I heard yesterday when I was at Hawthorne Psychiatric Center, is that many of these children have the ability to go into the community, but there are certain things that they have to be given.
No business knowing what I got, where I keep it.
Well, simply, the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court establishes certain limits at times. First Amendment is a good example. You know, crying wolf or crying, I don't know what the saying is, but if you're in a crowded room and you yell fire, there are limits that the Supreme Court has always put on certain things. So this would not be any exception.